Welcome back, everybody. We want to spend some time talking about a bill, a very controversial bill down at the State House that has been brought back to life. It's a bill that would let you carry a handgun in this state without getting a permit. Right now, you have to have a permit. If this passes, you would no longer have to have that. So how is it back from the dead? It's a really complicated process. And if you like the bill, you think this is very clever. If you don't like the bill, you think this is very sneaky. But this kind of blew my mind when I learned about it, and I wanted to show it to you. So, civics class is what we're in right now, okay? A bill, let's say it starts in the House. If it's approved in the House, it goes to the Senate. Now, the Senate can make some changes to that bill. Then it goes back to the House. If the House approves the changes, it goes to Governor Holcomb's desk. He can choose to sign it into law, or he can veto it. But what happens if the House doesn't agree with the changes? It goes to conference committee here. There are 4 lawmakers on the conference committee, 2 from the House, 2 from the Senate. They have to negotiate to try to agree on some changes. That's what's happening now with a handgun carry bill. Now, the interesting thing here is that lawmakers have basically killed the old bill. They're taking the language that would allow you to carry a handgun without a permit, and they're slipping it into a bill that has nothing to do with guns. The bill actually has to do with drug prices. So they're going to try to get it through that way. Totally bizarre, but again, that's politics. Sometimes it's just weird like that. So for more on this, let's go to Tom Powell, who will explain it for us. We want to take a few minutes now in this newscast and tell you about a key player in the war with Russia and Ukraine. It's NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That's an important name I want you to remember and something worth talking about here. Now, NATO is a military and political alliance that was founded in 1949 during the Cold War, the very beginning of the Cold War, and it's persisted until today. It's an alliance of 30 countries, the United States, Canada, and this big block of Europe over here, many European countries, all the countries in blue, with one collective overarching theme here. An attack on any one of these countries is considered an attack on all of the countries. Now, keep that in mind, because that brings us to Ukraine right here. It's in the white, used to be part of the Soviet Union during the Cold War, still maintains a lot of Russian cultural ties. Russia very much wants Ukraine to stay out of NATO. But Ukraine wants to be a part of NATO, and there's some of the conflict here. This is why you're not seeing NATO troops going into Ukraine right now, because, again, an attack on one NATO country, an ally, is an attack on all of them. If Polish troops went into Ukraine right now to help defend the Ukrainians, if a Polish soldier was shot or an airplane blown out of the sky, you'd have to bring in all of these countries to defend Poland now. That could obviously lead to major consequences, potentially nuclear consequences. So NATO, this big bloc here, is sending arms in. It's sending weapons. It's offering political and economic aid, but it's not sending in troops to Ukraine. They're going to have to fight this one out on their own. Now, the question here, going beyond the war in Ukraine, is if Putin is successful at taking Ukraine, does the land grab stop there? Or does he move up into the Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, large Russian-speaking populations, just like Ukraine has? If that happens, then the entire bloc has to come to the defense of these Baltic countries up here. That could trigger a major world war, something nobody wants, but something to keep in mind as we see the fighting raging here in Ukraine. So that's what we want you to know about NATO right now, as you hear it again and again and again during this conflict. That is some passionate testimony from State Senator Fadi Kodora. Those comments came moments before that handgun carry bill passed the state Senate. Now, we've been following along with this story very closely for you over the past few weeks, and as we've reported, the potential new law, it's not a law yet because it's still on the governor's desk, he hasn't signed it yet, but the potential new law started as House Bill 1077. It died in committee. Things did not end there, though. The language was transferred to another bill, an unrelated bill. That would be Senate Bill 209, engrossed. They use big language there at the State House sometimes. But state Republicans changed their mind, and they moved the language again. This brings us to House Bill 1296, which now sits on Governor Holcomb's desk after passing through the state Senate last night. Today, we talked to Fadi Kodora, who you just heard from, to get his thoughts on how this process unfolded down at the State House.
Put back because I don't have enough money to pay for it this week.
You can probably relate to that, right? This is Rita Scholes, and she's fed up, paying more for everything from groceries to gas. You get the picture. It's tough right now. The number crunchers at the Labor Department tell us wholesale inflation is up 9.7% year to year. So what does that mean for you? Let's return to Rita Scholes and our Tom Powell. All right, now is the time we can come back out here and give you a quick recap.
In our community,
someone needs a windscreen on the microphone. I know it was hard to hear some of that because of the wind. We'll get that fixed at some point if that was our fault. But well, let me bring you up to speed here. We know that there were two separate incidents at the airport that, out of an abundance of caution, led the authorities to evacuate the terminal earlier today. There was a suspicious package of some sort that had police curious about that. And then at the same time, there was a passenger on board an airplane who suddenly decided to get off the plane. Those two things, unrelated, happening at the same time, was enough to sort of raise a red flag at the airport, and that's what pushed everybody out into the parking lot until police could get a hold of the situation. The airport is back open now. If you have a flight going out, you can go to the airport and presumably go about your normal business. We do understand that all of the passengers there have to be rescreened through TSA, so that may take some time. So again, give yourself plenty of time. Things back open now at Fort Wayne International Airport. We will have another recap for you from Jeff Newmeyer. He's just off camera there. We'll talk to him at 5:30. In the meantime, more news to tell you about today. The man arrested in connection with the death of a woman and her 3 children now faces the possibility of life without parole if he's convicted.